Bees had been living in this backyard shed for at least 2 years. The landlord wanted to call an exterminator, but the family who lived here wanted to save the bees, so they called me. When I lifted up the floor, I found a huge hive full of gentle bees. The hive was so big I had to remove another section of floor to access the entire thing. Then I started removing the hive. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new one so the bees would have everything they need to survive. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive. As soon as I put the bees by the new hive, they marched right in. Then a stream of bees began running out from under the floor into the new hive. So I waited and watched to see if I could spot the queen bee in the crowd. After about 15 minutes, she appeared, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe. Once the queen was in the new hive, some bees began sending signals to help the other bees find their way home. I left the hive overnight, and by the next day, the entire colony was in their new home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees were living in this trash bin, and I was called to remove them. At first, I only saw one piece of comb. It was full of food and baby bees, which the bees worked very hard for, so I put the comb into the new hive. Then I saw more bees at the bottom of the bin, so I took out the trash and some bees along with it, and I found the rest of the hive. Then I removed all of the comb from the trash bin, and I put it into frames. Some bees were gathering on the outside of the bin, so I started scooping them into the new hive, and in the very first handful of bees I scooped, I found the queen. So I put her in a clip and I put her in the new hive. These bees were very gentle and were not trying to sting me, so I just kept scooping them off the side of the bin. Once I had enough bees in the new hive with their queen, they started telling the other bees where to go. All of a sudden, bees started running out of the trash bin and into their new hive. I waited for the bees to get in their new hive, then I took them home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. I just really love bees, and as a professional beekeeper, I spend most of my time around bees, so I've learned how to handle them, hold them, and help them if they need me. For me, having bees around me all the time is one of my favorite things about being a beekeeper, and being able to work alongside them makes every day another great day of saving the bees. I woke up one morning and my truck was covered with more bees than usual, so I ran outside in my pajamas to see what was going on. A swarm of bees that I caught the night before was leaving their hive and swarming again. I tried to offer their new hive back to them, but they weren't moving in very quickly, which told me that they wanted to go somewhere else. It was a race between me and the bees. I had to find the queen before the bees found a place to fly off to. After a few minutes, I found her. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, but before I could put her in the new hive, I had bees swarming to her in my hand. As soon as I put the queen in the hive, the bees began to go right in. I still had some bees on my hand who weren't leaving because they could still smell their queen on me. So I shook them off so they could find her. Within minutes, the entire colony was rushing to get back into their new hive. You can see how fast they were moving and how the queen was covered in bees. I waited for all the bees to get into their hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees in my pajamas. It's that time of year when the female bees kick all the male bees out of the hive, and they don't let them back in, so they either starve or freeze to death. Since mating season is over and the male bees don't do any work inside the hive, they are really just extra mouths to feed in the winter when food is scarce. So the female bees have to kick the male bees out for the good of the colony and so the bees can survive until spring. Working with bees has changed my life in so many ways, but more than anything else, it's made me understand just how important the choices that we make are to the creatures that we share this planet with. That's why I try to support brands who believe in sustainability and helping our environment as much as I do. And one of my favorite sustainable beauty brands to support is Guerlain. I've seen firsthand how Guerlain is making positive environmental impacts. They're redesigning their packaging to offer options for refilling and recycling, and they're reformulating some of their most popular products like their Abbé Royale to have even more natural ingredients. It's been such a privilege to work with Guerlain, and I hope that more companies will make meaningful commitments to our environment like Guerlain has made, so that every day will be another great day of saving the bees. This is an undertaker bee. and it's her job to haul dead bee bodies out of the hive. This is just one of the many important jobs that every female worker bee does throughout her life for the survival of the colony and of the species. Bees had been living in this backyard shed for many years. The shed was going to be torn down, but the homeowners wanted to save the bees, so they called me. Behind the wall of the shed, I found a huge hive of very gentle bees. So I removed my veil and I began removing the hive. The first part of the hive that I removed was full of honey, so I took a bite out of the honeycomb and it was so good. Then I started to carefully remove the rest of the hive. These huge pieces of comb were full of baby bees and also a lot of beautiful pollen that the bees use for food. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new hive so that the bees would have everything they needed to survive. I put the pieces of comb into frames using rubber bands to keep it in place. Then I just kept removing the hive piece by piece while looking for the queen. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive. Then all of a sudden, I saw the queen on the side of the shed. So I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I put her in the new hive. And pretty soon the entire colony was running into the new hive to be with their queen. It was getting dark and the bees needed more time to move in, so I left the hive overnight. When I returned the next morning, there were still some bees at the top of the shed, so I gave them some smoke and they began running into the new hive. Then I closed up the hive, I took them home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. A honeybee colony is not a monarchy like many people think it is. The queen bee is actually not the leader of the hive and she doesn't rule over all the other bees. It's the female worker bees who make the decisions for the colony, and they do so collectively as a group. The queen has one important job. She's in charge of laying all the eggs for the colony, and she is the only bee who can create more worker bees. So if the queen is doing her job well, the colony will follow her, protect her, and care for her. If the queen bee is not doing her job, or if she gets too old or dies, the female worker bees can choose to replace her and make a new queen. They can take any female worker bee egg and turn it into a queen bee by feeding it a special diet of royal jelly throughout its development. And so a hive can go on, generation after generation, with all the bees working together to do what's best for the good of the colony. A swarm of bees settled under this umbrella and I was called to remove them. So I started scooping bees off the umbrella and putting them into a hive. When bees are in swarms like this, it means they're looking for a new place to live. They tend to be very docile since they don't have any resources to defend. They don't have a hive, food, or baby bees to protect. A swarm of bees settled under this umbrella and I was called to remove them. So I started scooping bees off the umbrella and putting them into a hive. When bees are in swarms like this, it means they're looking for a new place to live. They tend to be very docile since they don't have any resources to defend. They don't have a hive, food, or baby bees to protect, but they should have a queen. So with every handful of bees I scooped, I spent time searching for the queen. I repeated this process over and over again. By the time I removed most of the bees, I still had not seen the queen, and I realized this was an unusual case of a queenless swarm. This colony would not survive without a queen, but luckily I had an extra one on me I could give them. As soon as I gave the queen to the colony, they rushed to meet her. If they didn't accept her, they would try to kill her. If they did accept her, they would release her from the box by chewing through the piece of candy that stops up one end. As soon as the bees in the hive met the new queen, they began sending signals to the other bees telling them to move off the umbrella and into the box. So I just waited in the swarm of bees as the colony moved into their new home. After about 15 minutes, most of the bees were with their colony. So I checked on the queen and saw that the bees were starting to accept her. I waited a while longer for the bees to get in their new hive, then I loaded them into my truck and drove home. I put the bees in my apiary so they could continue the important work they do in a place that's safer for them and for people, and it was another great day of saving the bees. In honor of World Bee Day and Guerlain's $1 million commitment to bee conservation, here are a handful of my favorite facts about honeybees. Did you know that you've probably never seen a male honeybee before? That's because over 90% of a colony's population is female. Female bees are called worker bees for a reason. They do all the work for the hive. They collect food for the colony, they build the hive, they raise the baby bees, and they take care of the queen bee. The UN has designated May 20th as World Bee Day, but you can join me and companies like Guerlain who give back to bees every day. Guerlain has committed $1 million to protecting bees. They've also established a program called Women for Bees to teach 50 women from around the world how to keep bees and start their own beekeeping business like I did. When you support brands like Guerlain, you are supporting bees and beekeepers around the world. And now, more than ever, bees need our help. I got a call to remove bees from one of the weirdest places ever, this toilet. The bees had been living in the tank of this toilet for years, and they filled the entire space with comb and had no room left to grow. So I got to work removing the hive. Everything I removed from the original hive was safe for the bees to have in their new home. Here's what the comb looked like. This piece had honey at the top, pollen below, and brood on the bottom. I spent a lot of time carefully removing each piece of comb. This was a happy and healthy colony of honeybees, and they were not stinging me at all. After I removed all of the comb, the toilet was still full of bees, which told me the queen was in there. Suddenly, I saw her crawling up the side of the tank. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I placed her in the new hive. Then I made a little bee bridge that led straight to the queen so the bees could easily get to their new hive. It worked, and the bees marched right in. After the bees started to recognize the bee box as their new home, I closed up the hive, I waited for the colony to move into the box, then we drove home, and it was another great day of saving the bees.